there is a whole infrastructure, a shadow government within the PPC, not the PPC, the UCP, that, whether or not Kenney resigns, we're still going to see the same lies. They'll tell people what they want to hear for political reasons 1 week, and then follow with the WHO afterwards.
That a guy who's jailed as many pastors as he has and arrested as many truckers as he has still is desperately clinging on to power is ridiculous. His own MLAs should be demanding that he resign because he's going to try to shape who the next premier is. And frankly, he's done a terrible job on COVID mandates. We don't want anybody like that. And as well, he's going to try and influence the nominations so that the ones who were questioning COVID mandates and lockdowns are going to be having their throats slit in nominations before he leaves. This is ridiculous. If he's leaving, just leave.
Adam Soos here for Rebel News, and we are at the Worldwide Rally for Freedom here at the Courthouse Park in Calgary, Alberta. Just this last week, we saw Jason Kenney resigning from the leadership of the United Conservative Party here in Alberta. We're going to be asking people here how much they think the fact that he was unwilling to stand up for fundamental freedoms and to stand up for our charter rights factored into the fact that he will not be carrying on as leader of the party.
While 51% of the vote passes the constitutional threshold of a majority, it clearly is not adequate support to continue on as leader. And that is why tonight I have informed the president of the party of my intention to step down as leader of the United Conservative Party.
So you had mentioned that you've just been in Canada for 1 month. You were asking me about the vaccine mandates. What's your response, or what do you think? Do you think it's reasonable that Canadians can't fly within Canada?
I think that is too bad, because in my country, the government never asked us to have to do vaccine to everyone. We just choose by ourselves. So I don't think it's good, because you have to choose if you want or if you don't want. And if you just fly to other country, then that is other country's rule. You don't have to. I don't think the government should ask everyone to do vaccine.
And now it isn't even just a matter of flying to other countries. Canadians, if they're unvaccinated, can't fly within their own country. What do you think of that as someone from Taiwan?
I think that is very weird, because in my country we don't have that kind of rules. But I think people can still be fine without everyone still have to be vaccinated. And even everyone be vaccinated, and COVID still have happened. It's not because of vaccine or not.
You're still making it out to these in your Android form?
Yeah, like I usually said, I wouldn't merge man with machine, and I'm against that usually in every way, but it's the only way I can be there, so it works.
So I got to ask you really quickly, if you don't mind, how much of a factor do you think it is that the fact that people like you were being sort of locked down, arrested, freedoms weren't respected? Jason Kenney made promises that he wouldn't bring in vaccine passports, promised he'd stand up for freedom, promised an end to lockdowns. That didn't happen. How much of a factor do you think that is in the fact that he's no longer the leader of the United Conservative Party?
Well, genuinely, I'd have to say that's probably one of the biggest factors. He flip-flopped around more than a fish out of water. You'd see the more sides of Jason Kenney than a fish out of water. And that is, in my way, just doesn't matter what the topic is. That's a big issue for me. And I'm sure a lot of people can agree that just not getting behind your own words and doing the opposite when you said you're going to do something is not an admirable trait I'd have in a leader, for sure.
At the start, he said kids would be fine, and he said he was more for the people, but like now we're seeing he dropped off with 51%, and I don't know, we saw his true colors throughout all this, and I think he knew, it was time to step down.
I mean, it's really disappointing, especially because at the start he was such a good leader, he seemed like a great guy, and then kind of 180 flip, so yeah, it's disappointing to see that.
So do you think that factored in pretty heavily in people losing faith in him?
I think so, yeah. And I'm glad. It's sad there was only like the 51%, but I wish there was more people who were wanting to boot him out. But yeah, I'm glad that he stepped down, definitely.
History has shown that Kenney has kind of said one thing and gone back on it later on. And this leadership review just shows that I think it's time for him to pack it in and kind of step aside for somebody who has a bit of a backbone so they can stand up for the true Albertan spirit and fight for our kind of freedoms and so on.
I think he's a coward. He should have stand up from freedom from the beginning and stood with the people and not sided with government and other authoritarian people.
And do you think the fact that he promised there'd be no vaccine mandate and then he brought one in and he promised the lockdowns would be over and he brought them back factored into him being ousted? I mean, ultimately he did pass the leadership vote barely, but not enough to keep people united.
Yeah, like I said, he just lies. So he just wasn't trustworthy for many people. So I think that's why we had the leadership review and all the other stuff that happened.
Well, I imagine from what I've heard so far from Albertans that I have spent time with at these rallies since I've come here, there's been a lot of people very upset with the way that he handled everything. So I imagine that he realized he had lost a lot of core support and realized that there wasn't much of a future for him. For me, that's what it seems like.
Well, I don't think it's just Jason Kenney that's the problem. Jason Kenney's only just the face of the problem, right? Jason Kenney would not have done any of the things that Jason Kenney did, saying one thing one day and 2 weeks later doing the complete opposite, unless the entire party was behind him, right? There is a whole infrastructure, a shadow government within the PPC, not the PPC, the UCP, that, you know, whether or not Kenney resigns, we're still going to see the same lies. They'll tell people what they want to hear for political reasons 1 week and then follow with the WHO afterwards.
I think that was a huge factor. I know, just speaking from me and what I thought of him, he has let us down on every avenue that you can think of. Throughout this whole pandemic, he has let us down. He has waffled from one side to the other, and he doesn't deserve to be our leader. And for him to get the amount of votes that he did, I think that's a clear indication that most of the UCP party does not want him. So step down, leave, and let's get somebody else in here that can really listen to the people and do what is right for the people of Alberta.
Where did you get that?
You guys, Rebel, it's awesome. It's wonderful. Yeah.
RebelNewsStore.com for those who want to grab one. So I'm kind of asking folks today, and you obviously have quite a bit of political insight and expertise. How much exactly do you think it factored into the fact that Jason Kenney is no longer the leader of the UCP or is set to resign momentarily, that he wouldn't stand up for freedom, that he promised there wouldn't be a vaccine passport, all this stuff?
That a guy who's jailed as many pastors as he has and arrested as many truckers as he has still is desperately clinging on to power is ridiculous. His own MLAs should be demanding that he resign because he's going to try to shape who the next premier is. And frankly, he's done a terrible job on COVID mandates. We don't want anybody like that. And as well, he's going to try and influence the nominations so that the ones who were questioning COVID mandates and lockdowns are going to be having their throats slit in nominations before he leaves. This is ridiculous. If he's leaving, just leave.
He wouldn't stand up for freedoms. He broke his promises on vaccine passports. He wouldn't end lockdowns. And then most particularly, stories that drew international attention, like your dad, Pastor Artur Pawlowski, spending all this time in prison, facing repeated harassment. How much do you think that factored into the end of Jason Kenney's reign at the UCP?
Well, listen, first of all, I'll believe it when I see it. I don't believe tyrants will just willingly step down. I haven't seen that before in history. So when he steps down, that's when I'll believe it. I think he's trying to cling on to his power some more, but we'll see what happens with that. As for his popularity, I think this man, Jason Kenney, is the most hated premier possibly in Canada's history. His approval rating is one of the lowest. People just despise him. It's not even that Albertans despise the party, they despise the leadership. Kenney has been a laughingstock of the world. I mean, what he did with pastors, arresting, jailing pastors is unprecedented. And he arrested and jailed more pastors than any other country in the world.
Don't let the taser be guilty!
I mean, obviously, people don't like him, and the vote was differed by about 1,000 votes, right? So 17,000 people wanted him, to stay in. 16,000 apparently allegedly didn't. I don't believe those numbers. The fact that he switched the voting to mail-in, I absolutely don't believe that those are the real numbers. I think the people that despise him would have showed up to Red Deer for the physical vote, and they would have just decimated any possibility of cheating the vote. So that's why he switched it to mail-in. I don't believe the numbers at all, but I look forward to this man either stepping down or being kicked out by his own party, because it's unacceptable. And if he doesn't step down, the UCP doesn't stand a chance. And if the UCP doesn't stand a chance, that means NDP is Alberta's future, and then Alberta is done for. So I hope the UCP does the right thing and realizes this man is he's a sinking ship. We need to get off of it.
So do you think, sort of the sentiment, there's mixed sentiments from people, obviously, in the public spectrum. Some getting the sentiment that Jason Kenney has been asked to stay, but he was ready to go. Others sharing the sentiment that Jason Kenney is holding on to power and still trying to exercise some influence. What's your opinion on that?
Who the hell would ask him to stay? What, the people who want to run to replace him and take his job? Probably not. Unless there was somebody who was a favorite of his, who he's going to stick handle in favor of. The guy's popularity is lower than Alison Redford's. He's been polling below his party for years. What is the point of this? I mean, obviously he wants to try to milk us out for as long as he can, but it's frankly, it's desperate. Let's move on.
And so why do you think he's doing that? If he's so unpopular, if the party doesn't want him there, why try to hold on?
Well, you know, if I had an RCMP investigation going on about kamikaze candidates, maybe I'd want to stay in the premiership just to make sure that I kept a lid on that, right? Or maybe I want to punish my opponents inside the caucus who saying it's time for the door, buddy, or any number of reasons. Or he's just got a power lust, you know.
Now, of the other sort of candidates, at least proposed or officially announced, are there any who might be resonating with people or that you think might stand a chance? Or if not that, which sort of values do you think will be central to a successful leader moving forward?
Well, one of the few guys who early on questioned what was going on in terms of COVID mandates and lockdowns was Drew Barnes. I don't know whether they're going to allow him to run because he's outside the party, right? He's sitting as an independent. But frankly, for a lot of the people that have been complicit with the lockdowns and the mandates and the arrests and the jailings and this, I don't think them choosing somebody like that is going to bode well. There's a lot of people who supported the UCP in the past who will not tolerate that.
Is there anyone that's coming to mind as someone who might actually advocate for freedom or might actually take a stand on some of these important issues?
Yeah, I haven't looked into that too much. I would hope it'd be somebody who's not a career politician, maybe somebody from the public. I think these days of career politicians are over, and if we want to see some real change, then we need members of the public to kind of step up and take over.
The two that I know of that are actually put their names in, I'm not going to vote for either of them. I think there needs to be some grassroots people that step up and start going and becoming leaders in this country, not the career politicians. So there needs to be some new ideas. There needs to be a lot of people that step up from maybe doing what they did in business and actually get into government and actually lead by listening to what the people want to do. So I don't exactly know who the next leader is going to be for the UCP, or even if that's the party that's going to govern Alberta in the end. So I guess we'll wait and see.
I have not seen any candidate who would be suitable, in my opinion. However, I did hear that Danielle Smith said that she would publicly apologize to all the pastors that were jailed, and that possibly fiscal compensation would be in order. For that, I 100% agree. I don't believe it unless she signed it like in blood or something. I don't believe that at all.
I've spoken with both Pastor Coates as well as his wife, Erin. I've spoken with people who had spoken with Pastor Podlosky as well, who had a pretty rough time, it sounds like, in prison. It wouldn't surprise me if there was going to be some compensation forthcoming there, but I'll have to wait and see.
That is what I am looking for a candidate. Personally, I think we need a new party in Alberta. We've seen what the UCP has done. We've seen what the Liberals have done. We've seen what the NDP has done. Nothing in the interest of Alberta. We need a new party, something completely new, because if we keep voting in less poisonous snakes, if you will, let's say the Liberals are a scorpion, the NDPs are a viper, and the UCP is a boa. You can't vote in a less dangerous viper. You gotta completely. What's the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again, and we've done the same thing over and over again in Alberta, and these people have shown to not care about Albertans and put our priorities ahead. So we need a new party, in my opinion.
I think we need someone that is really family-oriented, that went out in Ottawa to actually see what people were saying, who has an open mind, and is ready to just humble himself and listen to what people need and serve the public instead of the government.
It's too institutional. I mean, you're just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. What Alberta needs is an entirely new party, right? None of the old guard, none of the corrupt old guard that's within the UCP can stay. They all have to go. We really need a clean start, right? Because just changing the leader, in a way, the political party system is set up that way. They'll give you the illusion of change by just changing the leader or changing the government. But if you look at it, I mean, even federal conservatives, you dig into the details of the things that Harper did, and that's when Canada had a conservative government. Well, he signed off on the Foreign Investment Protection Act, FIPA, and this was a conservative government. He's following the New World Order plan just as much as Justin Trudeau. So I'd really encourage people to think critically. Just because a party or a leader labels themselves as conservative, are they really fighting for your freedom, your rights, your right not to be enslaved by a tax system? Everyone needs to think very critically. And I think the more people dig in, the more people get educated and find out about what's gone on, the more people will realize is every Canadian needs a fresh start. None of the old guard are welcome to the fresh start. We need new people from the ground up.
Well, there are a few hundred people on location here today. It is a far cry from the thousands and thousands, up to an estimated 7,000 people attending some of these events, but still a strong show of solidarity among Calgarians who are going to continue to protest until Canadians are once again free, until Canadians can freely travel, and until Canadians can leave their country, whether they're vaccinated or not. Many we spoke with here at the Worldwide Rally for Freedom are certainly in agreement that the end of Jason Kenney's reign as leader of the UCP extends largely from his broken promises on vaccine mandates, his incapacity to end lockdowns, and generally his lack of willingness to stand up for freedom. So many are feeling that this is justice ultimately being done, but they are equally concerned that he will remain on as leader of the party until a new leader is elected. Many fearing that this will mean his fingerprints will be all over the party moving forward. It certainly remains to be seen what a future leader can do with this party, and that is a story that we will be watching closely. As always, I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. For Rebel News, I'm Adam Soos. Well, one of the principal questions on very many people's minds today is the future of the United Conservative Party here in Alberta, a future very likely to be shaped by the next leader of the party. We want to ask tough questions and cover the other side of the story on the UCP leadership race so that you can make up your own mind as to who can lead the UCP moving forward and who will be the best at ensuring that Alberta remains strong and free. For all our coverage of the UCP leadership, go to ucpleadership.com.